Hi, at the time of recording this video is a time when we're all at home because of COVID-19 and we all had to work at home or not working at home. So in today's video, I'd like to talk about an expense that you could claim to help you to reduce your tax in the long run, or better still, claim a tax refund. It is not going to be a lot of money. However, like a popular supermarket says, every little helps. I hope you enjoyed this video. So the expense I'd like to talk about is expense referred to of use of home, for using your home for business or for working from home. Now, for the purpose of this video, I'd like to talk about how to claim this expense if you're a sole trader or self-employed, or if you're a limited company, or if you're just an employee. So, but first of all, let's talk about how to actually calculate this expense in the first instance. Now, what I've seen in the past is people actually trying to pass out all their home expenses or claiming too much because they use their home for business. So there's two main methods that you can use. Don't use that other one I just mentioned. The first one is you can either use the flat rate method. Under this method, you don't need to worry about the receipt. All you have to do is just to make sure you record the number of hours that you're working in the house for. HMRC has given us a certain amount of money that you can claim for using your home for business. It's a stress-free one if you don't want to bother yourself about bookkeeping or keeping receipts or keeping proper records, or even if you're an employee and this is just a one-off, you don't usually work from home. It's not going to be a lot of money you can claim under this method. If you're working from home and you want to use the flat rates method, the rate you'd use is for every month, if you work in your house, in your home, between 25 hours to 50 hours, you claim £10 per that month. If you work more than between 51 hours and 100 hours, you claim £18 per month. If you work between 101 or more, you can only claim £26 per month. You'd say it's not a lot of money, but however, 26 times 12 months without having to keep any record apart from the number of hours you're working in the house, it's not a lot, but it's something, especially if you're claiming for several years. You just need to calculate and keep a record of how many hours you're working in the house, and that's all you need to do, and then claim this expense every year. The second method you can use is the actual amount, the actual expenses of running your home. Now, this is a more complicated issue because at this point in time, HMRC actually wants you to apportion the business part of the expense of running your home from your personal aspect of running your home. Now, a lot of people actually do too much at the end of the day, which will make HMRC to pick up on that use of home as an expense. The aim of this method is as much as possible that this is actually divided properly. Now, how is this calculated? So how do you calculate your use of home expense? The first thing you need to have in mind is to actually know that you need to apportion this expense in a fair and reasonable basis. How do you do this? Step one, you need to count the number of rooms in your house. Now, if it's a 3-bedroom house, that room plus every other room in that building, including your kitchen and your lounge, because at times the kitchen might even be bigger than the room itself. It's just fair enough. So after you've done that, you need to then sit down and say, how many times do I sit down in this room to do my work? If it's just the room based, as in it's just for business alone, does anybody have access to this use, for the use of this room? So therefore what you do at that point then is to then say, oh, I use this room 100%, I'm very sure nobody else uses it 90% of the time, 50% of the time. So then the next thing to do then is to add up all your expenses in the house, and that includes the interest part of your mortgage. Repeat, interest part of your mortgage, not the mortgage itself, or your rent, or your light and heating, or the council tax. If you want to add a property repair, it has to be one that relates to that particular office that you're using. So everything added together now. For example, let's say I live in a 3-bedroom house and then I've added all the other rooms, making 10. I don't know how that is possible, however. I use this room all the time, except that my son uses this room for his homework. So 90% of the time. So that's 1/10 times 90%. The whole amount for the expense for running the house is £10,000. So whatever the amount comes to is what I'll be able to claim for my use of home as an expense if I'm actually using the actual method. One thing you need to put in mind when you're doing this is the treatment for a sole trader is different from a director of a limited company using their home for business. So if your business is a limited company, the business is a different entity from you. So therefore, you need to actually set a rental agreement or arrangement, put it down somewhere just in case so that you don't get in trouble with HMRC. But if you're a sole trader, there's not a problem. It's the same person that owns the business, that owns the property or the home. Now, how can you claim this expense? If you're running a business, all you need to do is just to add the amounts that you've calculated within the period of your accounting period in your account, and then it will reduce the tax you're paying on the long run. However, if you're an employee, it's a different way of claiming it. Now, the first thing is I've put a link on this video that you can go to and follow the step-by-step of actually claiming this expense. Now, if you want to claim this, if you're not under self-assessment already, if you're under self-assessment already, you can claim this through self-assessment. But if you're not under self-assessment now, you can actually claim it without going through self-assessment. If your expenses that you want to claim for each year is less than 2005. If it's more than 2005 per year, you'd have to go through self-assessment. Now, one thing you need to put in consideration if you're an employee is you need to make sure that this expense is actually authorized by your employer. That's number one. Number two is if your employer is already paying you for using your home for business, then you should not be claiming this expense in the first place. So this is only for if your employer is not paying you for using your home as an expense. So if you're planning to claim this expense, what you then need to do is, if you have a government gateway ID already, just put your details in and sign in and claim this expense. However, if you don't have one now, you can register yourself for a government gate ID, and then what you do, you need to have your P60 or your passport at hand for identification, and then all this expense you can claim it. The good news is you cannot just claim. There are loads of other expenses you can claim through this means. You can claim your subscription, you can claim your uniform expense, any other expense that you're using for running your business from the house or from the home. Now, you then need to put all your details in, your bank details, and this payment will be sent to you straight away. Like I said earlier on, it might not be a lot of money. However, I hope this video has been helpful and to help you to bring a bit of money, especially at this hard time that we're spending a lot at home. Thank you very much. My name is Ola Sulaimon.